Live from the European Parliament here in Strasbourg, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have for you on the program. Brexit, do or die, the last-ditch attempt to save the deal in the most critical week yet for Brexit. Take it or leave it. Europe makes its last offer, but will they be too little, too late? Happy birthday, Euro. 20 years since the EU united under a new currency. Why is the bloc more divided than ever? Dear France, Emmanuel Macron pens an open letter ahead of a national debate on his controversial reforms. And Double Take, an Afghan talent show discovers a Canadian Prime Minister's doppelganger. All right, it is time to meet our panel this evening. We start with Peter Simon. He's a German MEP with the Socialists and Democrats group. Peter, which of these stories are you keeping an eye on? I think I can guess.
Sorry?
Which of the stories are you keeping a close eye on?
The Brexit and the Euro.
I think yes. I think yes. All right, also joining us tonight is Sajid Karim, a British Conservative MEP with the ECR group. And you, Sajid?
Good evening. I think it's obvious for me as a Brit. Brexit is the primary part of our agenda at the moment.
Well, this is the biggest story that we have tonight, and that's exactly where we are beginning. The most critical week yet for Brexit. We have a lot of those, but I think this week is the most critical, and for Theresa May's government as well. Let's take a look at how it is going to play out. Today, MPs are battling it out in the Commons for the fourth day of Brexit debates. Tomorrow, they will wrap up, and then that evening, the long-awaited vote on the withdrawal agreement with the EU. Now, if that is rejected, Theresa May will have 3 days to come up with a plan B. On Wednesday, she may head back to Brussels for some last-minute negotiating. And next Monday, the 21st, there could be another Commons vote on her new plan. Well, today, Theresa May was on the offensive, making her final appeal to MPs, offering last-minute assurances and warning against the, quote, catastrophic harm that would be done to democracy if they fail to implement the result of the referendum. Here is some of what she had to say in Parliament today.
So I say to members on all sides of this House, whatever you may have previously concluded, over these next 24 hours, give this deal a second look. No, it is not perfect, and yes, it is a compromise. But when the history books are written, people will look at the decision. People will look at the decision of this House tomorrow and ask, did we deliver on the country's vote to leave the European Union? Did we safeguard our economy, our security and our union? Or did we let the British people down?
All right, well, for more on what Theresa May had to say today and to break it down for us, let's cross live to our correspondent Vincent McAviney in London. Vincent, so tell us all about what Theresa May said and what has the reaction been?
Good evening, Tessa. Well, Theresa May is in the Commons. I've just been in there now while she was making that statement. It was quite a subdued atmosphere. There weren't actually that many MPs in there for what she was about to say. And what she announced was that she hasn't been able to get any legal guarantees time limiting the Northern Irish backstop, nor is there any movement on being able to pull out from the agreement unilaterally. What she has said, though, is that she has had guarantees from Brussels that as soon as the withdrawal agreement, which they'll be voting on tomorrow night, is passed, they will be able to start going into negotiations on the future relationship between the UK and the EU. She says that Whitehall stands ready to go into that MPs just have to back her deal. And she was also out and about in the country today in Stoke, an area that voted heavily for leave in the referendum, really trying to push that this whole thing, if it doesn't get through, could be jeopardised. There could be no Brexit. It is really a message for her own backbenchers, the Brexiteers who she thinks are looking for something that is too perfect, that's not deliverable, and trying to get them on side with her deal. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, stood up immediately after the statement in the House of Commons, saying the Prime Minister had failed to get anything, that there was nothing new in what she had to say, and that she hadn't done any work over the Christmas period to try to get those extra things that the Prime Minister thought might get a few more MPs on side. But then afterwards as well, we had Ken Clarke standing up, the Tory grandee, saying that whatever happens, the Prime Minister will have to extend Article 50 because of the situation we're in now. But the Prime Minister still refusing to accept that that is the situation.
Vincent, what can we expect tomorrow?
Well, we're in for the final day of debate tomorrow. I think we'll hear a couple of impassioned speeches as the vote, we head towards that vote in the evening. We think that it'll happen at some point after 9 o'clock local time. All of the MPs will be in there. Something interesting, one MP has had to delay her caesarean section. A Labour MP, Tulip Siddiqui, she's had to delay it. She was meant to give birth tomorrow, but she wants to vote, so she is going to delay it, and she'll be there in the House of Commons tomorrow with the other MPs going through those voting lobbies. And it still at the moment is looking like the Prime Minister is on course to lose. And after her losses last week on those amendments, that means that she has to come back within 3 working days, so by the following Monday, and explain what it is that she's going to do next in Brexit.
Clearly a big day for MPs tomorrow. Thank you very much for that, Vincent McAviney. Now, earlier today, European Council President Donald Tusk and Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker offered some clarifications on the withdrawal agreement in a letter addressed to Theresa May. Well, for more on that and how things are shaping up in London, I'm joined by our political editor, Darren McCaffrey at Westminster. Darren, so just tell us about what this letter contained today.
Indeed, Tessa, what date is it today? I think it's, mid-January? It could well be mid-December, many say, because, of course, this vote was due to be held pretty much a month ago. It was postponed because Theresa May knew she was going to lose it. She then launched on a tour around some European capitals. She went to Brussels, to Amsterdam, to Berlin to try and win some concessions, particularly on this idea of the Irish backstop, this backstop that many of her own MPs are against. The reason that she is likely to lose that vote tomorrow. Has she made or gained any concessions? Well, if you listen to the European Union today, and indeed to Downing Street, she has. They have made it clear in this exchange of letters between Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk, along with Theresa May, that this backstop will only be temporary, that there is nothing to be gained by the EU in it. They also are clear that any new laws introduced under that backstop would not apply to the UK if they didn't want them, and that if it did come into force, or the transition period, if it was to be held up by some of the national policies, remember them, and Canada, that the European Commission would still plough ahead with a provisional transition. It does seem that Theresa May has gained some concessions, but listening to many of her political opponents today, not least of all the DUP, opposed to her deal, they're not terribly happy with this. They claim the EU for today is merely warm words.
All right, and Darren, you did manage to speak to some MPs, to some politicians today. Tell us about that.
Yeah, indeed, as I say, her offering today from the EU has got some support, and I think what you will see over the next 24 hours is some Conservative MPs peel away to support her deal. We've already seen movement of that over the weekend, but many remain implacably opposed to this, not least of all, of course, Nigel Farage, and who was in Westminster for today before going to Strasbourg later on this week. First of all, I was making the point there that Theresa May, yes, she's been away for a month, but she has managed to get some movement on this idea of the backstop, hasn't she?
What, soft words? Meaningless. Meaningless. Legally, absolutely meaningless. Look, the point is this. You could have a shoddy withdrawal agreement, but one that you could adapt and amend over time. The difficulty with this agreement is, under the terms of the backstop, ultimately, if the European Union did not wish to give us a good deal in the next phase of these negotiations, divide up the United Kingdom, or you stay permanently attached to European Union rules. It is a trap, and I think for most, I do understand. Or two, like Sir Edward Lee, have peeled away today and said, look, I see after the treaty, but what is the point of Brexit in name only? I have to say, if this deal got through here and came to Strasbourg, I'd face the dilemma, wouldn't I? As an MEP, would I vote for it so that at least we leave the treaty, or would I vote against it on principle. I'm still against it. I think the backstop is unacceptable.
But isn't the truth of the Commons, as you would brand it, because most MPs would support it, aren't you at risk of getting rid of it altogether if you don't vote for her deal?
Well, I mean, there is no question about this. There is a risk that her deal goes down. We finish up with an extension of Article 50, which now to me looks by far the most likely outcome of this current mess, and then perhaps a second referendum. So the risks are enormous, but to expect.
All right, I think we are having some technical issues there. Apologies for that. That was Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, talking to Nigel Farage there. All right, I'll put the question to you. We've heard, Sajid, what Theresa May had said today. Do you think there was actually any movement?
Well, the issue is if you cannot get the agreement past the DUP, then it falls at the very first hurdle, because it's very difficult to see how you're going to get sufficient numbers of members of Parliament to come and back a deal unless the DUP sign off on it. Because one of the issues here that hasn't really been teased out is this, that Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. If you have no Northern Irish members of Parliament today voting for this deal, then you are going to be taking Northern Ireland out of the European Union whilst they voted to remain in, and without Northern Irish MPs voting for it. The position of Scotland is different because you do have Scottish members of Parliament that are willing to vote for the deal.
All right. I mean, Theresa May, all throughout the day and in the past few days, actually, she's been saying, vote for my deal, otherwise there might be no Brexit. Is this a likely possibility, or is this a bit of a scare tactic, let's say?
The question is if she scares really a majority of the people in UK. As far as I learned from the newspapers I read, the majority has changed. And I think there is still a chance to remain. We as members of the European Parliament, more than 100 of us, wrote an open letter to UK's population, and we ask you to rethink about all this. And there's still a chance to withdraw this letter, and we would be happy and glad to keep you friends on board.
Yeah, talking about that letter, I wonder if we can pull up that graphic, because you wrote in that, so 100 MEPs from nearly every country wrote, and party wrote in that letter, we are reluctant to intervene in your domestic politics, but we cannot help but notice that the opinion polls show a growing number of voters who want an opportunity to reconsider the Brexit decision. And British decision to remain in the EU would be warmly welcomed by us, and we would be able to work with you to reform and improve the European Union so that it works better in the interests of all citizens. I mean, so this is the letter that the MEPs wrote. But where was this letter before Brexit happened?
Before this Brexit happened?
I mean, where was this show of love and support for the EU and for the UK and don't leave the EU? Where was that?
In all the years UK had been member of the European Union, it was the same relation than with all the other states. It's like in a family. We have good times, we have trouble, we fight with each other, and we have really happy hours together with each other. This is normal family life. And UK was treated like everybody else. And we ask you to come back, to stay a member of the family in the good times, in the bad times. We will have also trouble in the future, but we will also have really great chances all together.
I mean, there was a lot of letter writing today. So you had the Tusk and Juncker letter also that Darren was talking about earlier. That contained wording that said there would be legal value put on conclusions of the European Union. But that wasn't enough, was it?
Well, it's clear that the parliamentarians, having considered it, the Prime Minister still doesn't have the numbers she's going to need to get this agreement over the line. The point now is, by how many is she going to lose tomorrow? She's banking on, if she loses by less than 100, she's going to be in a position to represent the deal. Personally, I think if it's any more than 50, she has no chance on getting this particular deal through. The problem with the letter is it does not provide what the DUP wanted. And unless and until you have wording that the DUP are satisfied with, you simply aren't going to be able to take it any further. And just very quickly on Peter's letter, you know, even if that had been presented before the referendum, it would have made absolutely diddly squat of a difference, because within the United Kingdom, you had 40 plus years of drip feed poison regarding the European Union. No one letter was going to undo it at that time. But I welcome what has happened now, because the tide timing is very different, and the significance of what Peter and my colleagues have done is today very different to what it would have been at that time.
I mean, if Peter was right in saying that the mood has changed in the UK, that more people would probably now vote to remain after having seen this. I mean, that's what the point you were making earlier. Isn't it strange that Theresa May now is just pushing for a deal to be signed, considering she wanted to remain before that was her position?
Well, she is working on the basis that she's trying to enact the referendum result as it was. I don't know if the public mood has moved sufficiently to be able to comfortably say that Remain would win in a further referendum. I hope we get a further referendum. If we get a further referendum, Peter, we are going to have to fight as a family extremely hard on a united basis to win that referendum. We cannot take anything for granted.
So what would the Europeans do differently, the rest of the EU do differently this time, if there were another chance to vote?
I think we have to be clear about facts and lies. And the Brexit campaign showed what lies can make possible in politics. And I think the last month made clear for many people inside the UK, outside of the UK, with which fake facts this Brexit referendum also had been brought on its way. And if we all perhaps can find a basis of a discussion which is more related to reality, to the good aspects of our existing European Union and the needs where we have to develop the European Union, that it's better for us all, then we have a good basis for discussion.
But that is not to absolve the European Union of any responsibility or to not acknowledge that people were feeling disenfranchised or left behind in the UK. I mean, these are two things, a combination of those feelings. We can't disregard that as well.
Yeah, no, people had very genuine reasons for feeling angry towards their governance. Now, whether that was governance at a UK level or whether that was governance at an EU level, the referendum only impacted their ability to make their voices heard so far as EU membership was concerned. Actually, leaving the European Union doesn't solve any of the reasons as to why they voted the way that they did. In fact, it makes it worse. I think that is something that is much clearer now, but there is an absolute need, not just in the United Kingdom, but I believe in many of our member states right across the board, to actually address the core issues that our people today are feeling unsatisfied about. And when you make the point before about our domestic politics, yes, there is domestic politics, but within the European Union, no man is an island, including the United Kingdom. And what happens in the United Kingdom's domestic scene today has a very direct impact right across the European Union and vice versa.
Just a very quick word. You were talking to the people of the United Kingdom. Very quickly, in a sentence, what would the summation of that letter be?
Stay with us. It ain't over till it's over, as Lenny Kravitz said. Rethink the situation, and we have the chance to be all winners. If you don't rethink, I fear we will all be losers.
It's all up in the air. As you were saying earlier, we don't know what to think now at this point. And as we count down to the vote on Theresa May's deal, let us get some context with the help of some statistics. Here is a Brexit by the numbers.
Delivering Brexit involves difficult choices for all of us.
It was only 2 months ago today that Britain and the EU finally agreed the draft Brexit agreement. November 14, a decisive moment which put an end to months of deadlock. Markets bounced back, and for a brief period of time, it seemed Theresa May might be due some luck. Since then, Brexit's been debated 16 times in the UK's House of Commons. The British Prime Minister has been back to Brussels a further 3 times and had to deal with 9 resignations from her cabinet. She's been to Argentina for the G20 summit, Wales, Ireland, the Netherlands and Germany, where this happened. Theresa May appeared to get locked in the back of her car. But there was little luck to be found. Now just 1 vote remains. But has Theresa May done enough?
And here's a number for you, Saj. March 29th. What's going to happen? Give us a prediction.
Well, I don't think this deal is going to get through. I think we're going to have, at the very least, an extension of Article 50. And this is where I really do need, for the rest of my family, our European family, to show us a real sense of belonging, and by providing us with the flexibility we're going to need to come through this.
All right, let's leave it at that for now. In the meantime, let's move to Poland, because we had some breaking news this afternoon. The mayor of Gdansk has succumbed to his injuries today. That's after a brutal stabbing attack during a charity event. Alex Morgan and our team in the Cube have the latest on this story. Alex?
Well, this is a tweet from Mr. Adamovich's account. It's a memorial tweet, of course, from his staff, putting this up, commemorating the late mayor of Gdansk. This here, the image that certainly those around him would like people to remember, a face very well known. He'd served as mayor of Gdansk for 20 years, one of Poland's longest serving politicians. And he was attending the annual fundraising event in the city on Sunday in front of hundreds of people. Of course, it's a well-known event. He's a well-known face. And here he was in front of the crowd, holding a sparkler aloft, speaking to the crowd. This is shortly before the brutal attack. Let's just show you an Instagram post from the mayor's account showing his view of that crowd. You can see the lights, you can see the phones. Well, moments after this picture was posted, it was taken, a man ran onto the stage. He was armed with a knife. He stabbed the mayor before parading around the stage shouting that Mr. Adamovich is dead, holding the knife in the air before he was then arrested. Now, the mayor was badly wounded. He was taken to hospital where he succumbed to, he died of his wounds after hours of surgery. Doctors, we know, trying desperately to save him, as well as hundreds of blood donors coming forward, trying to offer what they could after reports, of course, the mayor had lost extensive amounts of blood in this attack. Now, the prosecutor saying that this man, we know he's 27, he's called Stefan, that's all we have in terms of his name. He was released on bail last month from after serving while serving a 5.5-year prison sentence for robbing banks in 2014, or attempting to rob those banks. Well, we know that now psychiatric analysis is taking place to ascertain whether or not Stefan, this man, could be held criminally accountable. But either way, this attack, it has shocked people right the way across the political divide in Poland, including, of course, the country's Prime Minister from the ruling Law and Justice Party. Certainly not on the same political page of Mr. Adamovich, but saying here this attack is barbarous. It deserves condemnation, extending his condolences to the family of Mr. Adamovich. The former Prime Minister of Poland, now the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, saying he lost a friend and a true European in the murder of Mr. Adamovich. And now the Polish President will meet with representatives of various parties planning a march against violence and in memory of Mr. Adamovich. So, Tessa, an attack that has shocked people right the way across Poland now calls for fresh condemnation of violence against politicians, but truly a very shocking, very public attack.
Thank you for that, Alex, and our team in the queue. Peter, you were shaking your head during the whole time. I mean, there was an attack in Germany recently, also quite a brutal one. I mean, attacks on politicians. Quick word on that.
We had similar attacks in the past in Germany too. Our former finance minister, Schäuble, was injured so heavily that he's in the wheelchair until today. Oskar Lafontaine, once leader of the Social Democratic Party, had an attack like this, was heavily injured.
Yeah, it's
horrible, but things like this happened in the past, and it's nearly not possible to stop things.
And as Joe Cox
and
in the
indeed
UK,
in the UK, we have Joe Cox at the time of the EU referendum.
Of course.
Passions run high. But the President of the European Parliament made a very profound statement today, because we held a minute's silence. And he said that there really is a need to calm things down, particularly in the social media field as well.
Absolutely. These are sad developments indeed that we're seeing. All right, coming up on Raw Politics, Emmanuel Macron, he writes an open letter to France on the eve of a national debate on his reforms, while rival Marine Le Pen unveils her candidates for the upcoming European elections. Plus, the 20 years after Europe's united under a new currency, do people feel their lives are better or worse off? Don't go away. you'll see all smiles there, the jubilant scenes from when the euro note first became available. Now, this month marks the 20th anniversary of the euro. Since then, we've seen the bloc expand to 28 members, but we've also seen the rise of Euroscepticism. And now the EU is confronted with the possibility of Germany possibly exiting the union. Well, at its party congress this weekend, the far-right AfD voted to push for Germany's departure from the EU if their demands for reform are not realized, prompting concerns about a so-called Dexit. And one of these demands is to abolish the European Parliament altogether, the same parliament that the party wants to win seats in during May's elections. All right, we have got a lot to talk about, and back with me is German MEP Peter Simon with the Social and Democrats group, and you're also chair of the Economic Committee here at the European Parliament, was vice chair. And joining us also is fellow German MEP Hans Olaf Henkel, who is with the European Conservatives and Reform. Because you were a former member of the AfD, and the AfD is created initially because they really wanted to see the abolishment of the euro. They were against the euro currency. And you have written extensively about splitting the currency into two. So do you think the introduction of the euro was the beginning of the end?
Yes, I think I was in favor of the euro when it started. When I saw German politicians and many others in Europe breaking all the promises which they gave the Germans when they gave up the D-Mark, I changed my mind, especially with the first bailout package for Greece, which was, in my view, a flagrant violation of the Maastricht Treaty. And then following that, we have had, of course, numerous savings packages for the euro. And you can, in my view, demonstrate in the south
bailouts, you mean?
Bailouts. You can demonstrate in the south of Europe that the euro is much too strong for Greece and Italy, Spain, Portugal, even France, and much too weak for Germany. So Germany exports like hell, and the south of Europe is suffering still from significant lack of growth and high unemployment, and that is due to the fact that the euro is a one-size-fits-all currency which fits no one.
And let's not forget all the austerity, anti-austerity protests that we've seen
which were
throughout
a result
the years.
of it, absolutely.
Exactly, the result
yes.
of the policies that were put in place because of the euro. Now, when you, as the vice chair of the Economic Affairs Committee, do you talk about the fundamentals? The fact that, as Hans was saying, these are economies that are completely different, and that it is not, economists would argue, the euro is not at a point where you can actually have that currency working as it was imagined. Do you actually talk about that issue, that fundamental issue?
First of all, for me, the story of the euro is a success story. The question is, was it invented in the right place? This means in the right framework. I think lots of things that we
success by what measure?
The last 10 years, like for example creating a banking union, should have been done before. I started as an MEP 2009, and I was really wondering these days why several things we had to bring on the way because of the financial crisis hadn't been brought on the way before. Now, dealing with this for 10 years, I say we are on a very, very good way to strengthen the Eurozone, to strengthen the euro, and I think we should go ahead with this to keep us all together, and that there are weaker economies and stronger economies. We know this also in Germany. Eastern Germany's economy is weaker than the economy of the state I come from, Baden-Württemberg or Bavaria. We have to find mechanisms to keep this in balance.
But do you agree it's a success?
No.
Yes.
Not at all. I mean, the facts are very clearly that in the last 20 years, the Eurozone grew much less than the non-Euro countries in the European Union. So the countries which were outside the Eurozone, like, for instance, Denmark, Sweden, Czech Republic or Poland, did much better. And by the way, the world did much better than the Eurozone. So it's not quite true.
And can we argue that this was at the...
Statistics really don't prove
at the heart of
Brexit.
Brexit?
It's a failure.
From my point of view, it's not proven that this is the reason of the euro. That the reason is the euro for this. Yeah, for sure, other countries develop better, but the conditions where they started with this development were also different. So
you don't think we're just kicking the can down the road, that we're going to have the same structural problems down the road again?
Yes, I think. Look, I think it is quite obvious. I mean, I think we should stop trying to manipulate the economies of the Eurozone to fit a currency. And I think we should restart to have a currency which reflects the reality of the economies. By the way, a euro for Northern Europe would probably have worked, because we have had, before the euro, constantly a very tight agreement. When Germany revalued, Austria did so, and Netherlands did so, Denmark did so, and Sweden did so. So with this economy, one could have had a common currency, but certainly not together with the South.
All right, well, there we have it. One says the euro is a failure, and another says the euro is a success. All right, well, let's move on to Italy, where a row is brewing over one of the country's most famous landmarks. Let's take a look.
Welcome to Rome, a city packed with ancient monuments. If you've visited, the chances are you've thrown a coin over your shoulder into the Trevi fountain. Doing so, legend has it, will guarantee your return to the Eternal City. But an unholy row is now raging over what should happen to the 1.5 million euros tossed into the fountain each year. It's traditionally given to a Catholic charity to help the poor, but now Rome's five-star mayor, Virginia Raggi, is giving the church a run for its money, insisting that the cash should belong to her cash-strapped city council, which finds itself under increasing pressure to clean up the streets and repair the city's infrastructure. Back at the fountain, and with the council and the church on opposite sides of the coin, who knows how this cash flow controversy will end?
Very, very quick reaction. Church or city council?
Well, you look, I threw myself many of those euros and previously D-marks, as a matter of fact, or maybe even lira over my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I didn't do this to fix the potholes, which are also a result of lack of money in Italy, which is again a result of the euro.
And one answer. Church or city council?
Sorry?
Church or city council?
Church.
Okay, well, there you go. Quick answer. All right, after the break on Raw Politics, 2,300 words. The French president writes an open letter to the people ahead of a national debate on the future of France. That is coming up, so do stay with us. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, there's a lot of anger in the streets of France as protests continue for its 9th consecutive week. Now, these images, let's have a look at them. From Bordeaux, showing a police clashing with protesters as crowds come face to face with tear gas and water cannons. Now, there are 84,000 people were reportedly on the streets across France alongside 80,000 police officers. 240 people were arrested. Now, the Yellow Vest protests began back in November over proposed increases in fuel taxes, but have since exploded into a general discontent with calls for the president to resign. Now, in an attempt to rechannel some of that anger, the French president will launch a nationwide debate tomorrow. And 2 months, 4 themes, and 35 questions. So those are the numbers. It will cover everything from taxation to migration and the green transition. And to kick things off, he's written a letter to the French people. And he says, France is a country unlike any other. The feeling of injustice is more alive than elsewhere. But if everyone is being aggressive to everyone else, society falls apart. And joining me to discuss this, we have Bruno Gollnisch, a French MEP. You are with the Rassemblement National.
Yes.
And we have our correspondent, Maeve McMahon, joining us. All right, when you look at this letter from Emmanuel Macron, what is it? Is it an apology? Is it defiance? What tone do you read from it?
Well, I do not know exactly what he intended to, but, although I am against Mr. Macron's policy, I must confess that there are very interesting questions in this letter, but I wonder if it is not, I would say, too late, maybe, because there is a real uprising, there is a lot of discontent. By the way, Macron himself is not the only man responsible for that. I mean, the problems have been the problem that my party, for example, has exposed, and during the past nearly 40 years, that explode now with this kind of uprising of the people. Yes.
And now it seems that Emmanuel Macron he's appealing to emotion. As you said, it could be too late, but he's appealing to emotion right now, it seems, and possibly to say, I'm going to listen to you. Isn't this a problem that people had with him?
Absolutely, and through our reporting, we've been speaking to people. We've had reporters on the ground in France. We had our Annelise Bourges, who spent a lot of time with the Gilets jaunes, and they really feel they're not being listened to by politicians, and especially by Emmanuel Macron. So this is his way of saying, look, now I'm listening to you and I'm asking you for solutions. I'm telling you via this letter, via these town hall debates, talk to me and tell me what is it that you want me to do.
And I think the violence that we've been seeing is actually really quite polarizing. There's still a high support for the Gilets jaunes, but there are some on the far left and the far right who would say that the extreme anger manifestation is justified.
Well, I do support the Gilets jaunes against the government, but I do support also the police against the authors of violence. But you know, this violence is a fact of a minority. I mean, most of the people who take part in this movement are quite fair people, blue collar, or people who came to realize
so you're saying
that
the violence is by a minority.
Yes, it's a minority, right, which I condemn very clearly.
All right. Well, while Emmanuel Macron, he's been urging protesters to direct their anger to a national debate through that letter that he had written. Well, the leader of France's far-right party, the National Rally, urged them to look to the European elections. Marine Le Pen launched the party's electoral campaign yesterday with the 23-year-old Jordan Bardella in the driving seat, and alongside him 11 other candidates hoping to shake up the political scene both at home and in Europe. With the party gaining in the polls since the Yellow Vest movement began, will Marine Le Pen get the revolution she is hoping for? Now, Marine Le Pen, she did say that, she is hoping for a yellow vest. I guess I'll ask you this because you're with the National Rally. She's looking for that rational, the revolution. But is this only potentially possible when times are bad? And when times are good, she wouldn't get the votes.
Well, I think the next European elections could be an opportunity for the people to say exactly what they want, because the problem with the Gilets jaunes is that we understand why they are, say, discontent and the reasons of the protests, but even if they do not like politicians, they rightfully, by the way, in many cases, but there should be political response. Politics and politicians might be two different things.
But do you think we're riding the wave of discontent? Do you think that doesn't really address issues? It's just more of, okay, I feel angry, therefore I'm going to vote. Like a protest vote, and doesn't really solve any problem.
Absolutely. It's very hard to govern. As Emmanuel Macron has seen and experienced, it's extremely difficult to be the president of France. It's an extremely monstrous task what he has to do. And Marine Le Pen is now putting herself forward for that role because, of course, that's what she has her eye on the prize, which is the Elysee.
Yes, but we propose solutions to all these problems. For example, the lack of democracy. The Gilets jaunes spontaneously they ask for example, referendum, as in Switzerland or in Italy, for the people to be able to put forward some questions and to give the answer, or to propose some bills for new laws. We were the first. It was on a program 40 years ago.
And since your group was formed back in in 2015 in June. What have you done to improve the lives of people like those out in the streets for the Gilets jaunes?
But unfortunately, we are an opposition party. We aren't the majority here. But in the cities that we conquered, the satisfaction of the people is absolutely obvious. That's why there is no many.
But then the
many articles about
the
cities of which, for example, the member of the Rassemblement National is the mayor.
But it's also a fact that majority of French people,
each election.
Yeah, but majority of French people will still not want to see Marine Le Pen in power. This is the reason why Macron was voted.
Yes, but we respect the institution. The institutions, yes. Well, Mr. Macron has his chance. He was very popular. People thought that he will change and solve certain problems, and now the people are dissatisfied.
And then it seems that it is bound to continue in France.
Absolutely. We are the minority also in this European Parliament, but I think not only dissatisfaction of the people is growing, but also there are more people who think that we also have the solutions to the problems.
All right, we'll have to move on for now, but indeed, it is bound to continue these protests in France. But first, let us cross the pond. Let's go over to Washington, where there could be a new president in town, though not in the way you might think. Let's take a look.
So this is a sample of some of our collections.
She's a businesswoman, fashion designer, author, and advisor to her father, the President of the United States. But could Ivanka Trump be about to become president herself, specifically president of the World Bank? Soon after the incumbent, Jim Yong Kim, announced his surprise resignation, there was speculation that Miss Trump could be in line for the job. The Financial Times reporting that the president's eldest daughter's name is one of a handful floating around Washington amid the White House's search for a replacement.
The President of the United States!
As the Trump administration nears the halfway mark of its term, could this be the boldest of power plays?
Maeve, Ivanka for World Bank president, what do you think?
Well, everything is possible in this day and age, isn't it?
Exactly. Anything is possible, indeed. All right.
Well,
on that,
I propose myself to succeed to Mr. Ghosn at the head of Renault company, so why not?
Why not? All right, still to come on Raw Politics, an uncanny resemblance, the Afghan wedding singer who could pass for the Canadian Prime Minister. Well, that is coming up in Raw Moment. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Well, the countdown is on for the vote on the Prime Minister's Brexit deal. By the end of the day tomorrow, Theresa May will know the fate of her withdrawal agreement. And with us for a preview is our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, back with us from London. All right, Darren, what should we be watching out for tomorrow?
Well, I think the most crucial thing in all of this, Tessa, as I said at the top of the programme, is what really has changed since I was stood here a month ago. Of course, we have had the passage of time. We've had Christmas and New Year's. And today, we did have a little bit of movement, I suppose, from the European Union in that exchange of letters. May did gain some concessions from Brussels. But clearly, when you talk to MPs here, many feel it is simply not enough. It is looking like Theresa May will lose tomorrow, potentially lose quite big. There are estimates suggesting she could lose by nearly 200 MPs. That would be pretty devastating. Let me put you in context. Downing Street are suggesting that by losing less than 100, that it wouldn't be that bad for Theresa May. In any other circumstances, again, that would be pretty difficult for an incumbent Prime Minister. So let's work on the assumption, as you say, that Theresa May does lose, Tessa. What then happens next? Well, in theory, she's got until next Monday, 3 working days of Parliament to come up with a plan B. Will that be enough? She is potentially likely to go back to Brussels again to ask for more. Will they offer more? Many feel not, and that is where this whole range of other options come into play. Will the Labour opposition, for example, push for a vote of confidence, a collapse of the government, a general election? Will MPs here try and wrest back control of this process from the executive, from government, try and take control of the forthcoming Brexit process? Or will Britain simply, because this Parliament can't make a decision, hurtle towards no deal? All those options remain on the table. The Prime Minister today couldn't even rule out extending Article 50. Tessa, be in no doubt that whatever happens tomorrow evening could well shape this country and indeed potentially the European Union for years, maybe even the next decade to come. It's that bigger moment.
Indeed it is. Thank you for that, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor. And back with me in the studio, our correspondent, Maeve McMahon. And also joining us again is Sajid Karim, British Conservative MEP from the ECR group. Now, Sajid, earlier we were talking about how, what do we think of all this? It's so hard to really decide on which of the scenarios that we think is likely. I'd like to focus on the Parliament wanting to regain control of that. What do you make of this move? Like, it seems like they're manoeuvring so much because they want control of this.
Well, it's clear Parliament has quite rightly said right from the outset that it should be playing its full and proper role as a representative of the people in this process. But as time has moved on, Parliament has indeed been flexing its muscles and is giving much clearer direction as to where all of this is going to go. I think dependent upon the size of the defeat tomorrow and the Prime Minister's response, Parliament will not at all feel shy of saying, actually, we're going to step in and take control of this process.
Will that be a bigger headache for the EU?
I don't think so, because you are then going to be in a situation where the Parliament, I feel, is going to be in a much more flexible situation than the government is, because one, the government painted its own red lines in very dark red. The Parliament doesn't have that restriction on it. And secondly, the Parliament is very well aware of the feelings of the British people 2 years after they actually voted on this, 2.5 years, in fact, since they last had a say on this.
And Maeve, you have your ear here. You talk to a lot of people here in Brussels. What is the feeling about the extension of Article 50? What preparations are they making? Which scenario are they most preparing for?
Well, they want certainty, obviously. Many MEPs I've been speaking to today. Yeah, I mean, you know, here they love planning. They love being very organised, but with dealing with something like this, it's impossible really to plan. Clock is obviously ticking. MEPs here in the House, they will have to vote on this withdrawal agreement. MEPs I've spoken to today here in Strasbourg hope that it'll be backed. If not, they said that they would be up for accommodating an extension of that Article 50 to allow perhaps some 3 months. That would mean until June, but not July, because of course, as of July, we'll see the new fresh faces here in the European Parliament, and the 73 British MEPs, like yourself, those seats have already been redistributed to 13 other EU member states, which means there will be no British MEPs in these upcoming elections in May voted for.
I mean, I think we understand the feeling, general feeling here in the European Parliament is that they don't want the UK to leave, and they'll be, again, as you say, open.
Over and over again. They've been saying this for 2.5 years.
Absolutely, that is a general feeling.
But the time of mourning has moved on, and they just want to get it done now and just have a proper deal and a relationship with their close neighbour, the UK.
But do not underestimate the power of the EU to be imaginative in the most difficult of circumstances.
Indeed. All right. And just to let you know, you can watch a special coverage of the Brexit vote right here on Euronews, and that is at Raw Politics, of course, at 1800 CET. And then at 1900, the special coverage begins with Euronews Tonight, including a live coverage of the vote and, of course, comprehensive reaction and analysis. All right, let's, before we go, we'll bring you tonight's raw moment, which comes from Afghanistan, where a talent show contestant's striking resemblance to a world leader has turned him into a celebrity. Let's take a look and see if you can guess the singer's political double.
مدتی شد که من دنیای غزل گم کردم گل خوشبوی چمن مای غمل گم کردم مدتی شد که من دنیای غزل گم کردم
I love your reaction, Sarge. I mean, he was about to say he had no idea who Justin Trudeau was. What was that reaction?
It looked like Justin Trudeau after an electric shock.
Or after a night out.
But,
Let's get them to meet together here on the couch.
That would be nice. That would be nice. It's funny because he had no idea. He's from a remote village, I think, in Afghanistan. He's a wedding singer. I think he does look like Justin Trudeau.
Well, we all have a doppelganger somewhere.
I don't get it. I really don't. I don't see it.
All right, well, there we go. We would love to hear from you, of course. Do always tell us what you're talking about. I am on Twitter at Tessa Ercilia, or you can follow at Euronews and use the hashtag #RawPolitics. Join us again tomorrow. Have a good evening. Bye for now.